Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start with a story that shows not the best relationship between relatives, so sit back and make yourselves comfortable. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. CB Stepsister leaves me with her kids for 3 days instead of 3 hours. Gets mad when I refuse to take care of them. This happened a few years ago during the summer when I was working part-time at my parents' house. My stepsister, the CB, had asked me if I could watch her kids for a few hours at her apartment. I jumped at the opportunity to be out of my parents' house and just relax, especially since she said the kids, ages 2 and 3, would already be asleep for the night. Note that I did this without pay because I knew she couldn't afford to pay me. I get there around 9, she waves goodbye and says she'll be back in a few hours. The 3 hours are fine. I'm just chilling in the living room, watching movies and messing around on my phone. My nephews stay asleep. Around 1 a.m., I text her asking her what her ETA is. She texts me within minutes saying she's running late. Whatever, it's not like I have to get up early. I feel myself dozing off, so I lie down and decide to take a nap. I wake up to the sound of crying and go check on the nephews. The 2-year-old is awake and being fussy. I glance at the clock at the bedside and am shocked when I realize it's 6 in the morning. I check my phone and my mom has called me and texted me asking if I ended up staying the night. There are no messages from my sister. I immediately call her while playing with younger nephew, while older nephew is now awake attempting to climb up my leg. She doesn't answer. Instead, I get a text from her saying she's in Colorado, not our state. She won't be back for 3 days. And, oh yeah, you've got to take care of the kids. They've got nowhere else to go. It's just for 3 days. At this point, I know I've been set up, and I text her if she's not home within the next 5 hours, I'll have to take the kids to their grandparents, not my parents, who both happen to be busy, but estranged dad's parents. I tell her I'm sure they'll be more than happy to take them both since they never get to see them. She instantly is texting me paragraphs telling me I'm not allowed to take her kids there, they judge her and have no respect for her. Not true, she just hates them because of her baby daddy. She tells me if I take them there, she will sue me, put me in jail for stealing her children, blah blah blah. I tell her that she shouldn't have abandoned me with her kids then. The following conversation occurs, to the best of my knowledge. CB, you agreed to take my kids. You therefore are responsible for them. You can't give them to someone else. Me, I agreed to 3 hours. I'm 18 years old and you left me with really young kids. I have work this evening. I can't watch them for 3 days. Come back now or I'll take them to their grandparents. They'd be happy to take them. CB, I can't believe you're making such a big deal out of this. I'm giving you my apartment for 3 days and you get to spend time with your nephews. You should be paying me for the apartment. You're so selfish. Wow. Okay, I already called grandparents. They're free to take them. So that's where they're going. I'm taking your children to grandparents. Don't ask me again to watch your kids. You effing C-word! If I was your full sister, you'd do it, you a-hole. All you care about is yourself. You won't even spend time with your nephews. Effing piece of crap. I hope you rot in hell. At this point, I ignore her, call the grandparents, who are more than happy to take them for a few days. They come and pick them up, and I leave. When she gets back from the trip, she still stayed the whole 3 days, she shows up at my parents' house and starts cussing me out. My parents kick her out, and I don't see her for the rest of the summer. I like that the grandparents were such an unacceptable place to be that she stayed for 3 days. And our next story. Pathological a-hole gets what's coming to him. I was starting my career in security business and had little experience of the field work itself. In my country, private security is highly regulated, important later, and licenses are needed almost every step of the way. I was one of the almost 100 people working, and soon learned that connections you make in job are most important. Work was good, and I had an awesome team where we handled security checks and also traffic near the event locations. As I was lacking funds to get pro equipment, I was forced to get used material, workwear, vests, second-grade pepper spray, etc. Here's where our scamming pathological liar comes in. Let's call him Sammy. Sammy was a bit weird but social character and was, at the time, deemed nice by many in our company. I had made some friends with similar situation in our company, and Sammy soon came to us promising that he could sell us new sets of vests and equipment with reasonable price. We were stupid to believe him, but we made the deal as circles in security business were small and bad word spread fast, so we thought that there was no risk. He got the money up front and promised delivery on day X, a few weeks from that. Soon he called me and asked that I was interested in becoming a bouncer for a few times in the next week. I said sure, as I needed the money. He promised that he'd pay me in cash later that month. He also asked if I was interested in working as security in a county fair. I said sure, as they're the easiest money there is. I did the bouncer gigs as agreed and later went to the county fair. There were other people from our company as well. Sammy was head of security. There, I asked about the equipment me and my friends paid for. He said they would arrive next week. Weeks passed, no money from fair and no equipment. He transferred me money from the bouncer gigs, but only half what I was promised. When I asked about it, he said there was a fee as he was the middleman. He also claimed that county fair had financial issues, so he couldn't pay. Next week, he had another explanation. In normal work in sports events, colleagues who had worked with me in the fair had not been paid either, and they were suspecting that something was wrong. I was getting worried, so I called to county fair organizers directly, which Sammy had specifically told me not to do as he was taking care of the situation, to ask them what's going on. They were baffled. They told me that responsibility of the county fair security was given to a voluntary organization of old and retired security officers who work for community free of charge. It was voluntary, a non-paid gig. Sammy was volunteering for that organization. He'd been given a job to get volunteers to work the fair and had thought that it would be easier to get them if he promised them pay. I had lost more than $350 in his shenanigans in a week, and I needed that money. I called the organization about the situation, and they fired Sammy on the spot from his responsibilities, and he was banned from all events they were working on. The security company I worked also had a small carrier/hauling business on the side. I applied for that as I had a license to drive a truck, and the boss was understanding that I really needed the job. I hadn't seen Sammy anywhere as he was on leave from security gigs, and nobody knew where he was. Also, people were pretty PO'd at him that they'd heard from me what he'd done. After 2 weeks at the truck job, I was asked to come to the office. It turned out that the day before I had done my route completely wrong and deliveries had been late too. I was fired on the spot. Leaving the office, Sammy comes from nowhere in the hallway. He stares at me and smiles like the devil himself and says, "Oh, you lost your job? Well, that happens when you F with the wrong people." I was stunned and didn't know what was happening. Sammy walked into the office behind me and closed the door. Later that day, I learned he was responsible for the routes and delivery markings and times. He'd been hired just a few weeks before me for that job. He got me fired. I quit my job at security company as boss sided with Sammy. Even he admitted that Sammy was probably guilty of making me fail at the job. I couldn't go to the police as it was literally his word against mine. I was beyond angry and made a silent and holy promise that I would ruin Sammy's life no matter what it takes. Soon I applied for a job at another bigger security company which handled supermarkets, malls, etc., and got the job. A few years passed and I had proven to be trustworthy and hardworking security officer, so usually when there was someone new in the job, they were handed to me for training/job introduction. Meet Jay. He came to learn the basics, and while I was teaching him, I also asked him about his life and everything as we'd be working closely together. Jay told me everything about his life and mentioned that he was working on the side also in security company named X, and the X was very close name to local well-known security company XX. I thought that he had mispronounced the company name as he was from the countryside and his dialect was different than mine, but he insisted that he worked at Company X. I asked who his boss was, and it was Sammy. I realized that years of waiting had paid off as I knew what Sammy had done. And now for the revenge. I told Jay everything that had happened between me and Sammy. Jay was shocked, but agreed that he had also been suspecting something was a bit off with Sammy. As everything was bureaucratic in my country, there was public record of all security companies. Sammy's company was not a registered company, which is a felony as he doesn't have a license. Jay told me that Sammy had about 15 people working for him and they had a private Facebook site where he was acting as a job agent and handled the workers' salaries. I knew exactly what he was doing. He was fooling them all, that he takes care of their taxes and pension contributions as their employer's duty, but in reality, he just took the money for himself and falsified the payslips. I asked Jay to collect all the evidence he can of Sammy, Jay took pictures, screenshots, and collected statements from his colleagues. Soon, Sammy heard about this and fired Jay from his fake company and started to threaten him with lawsuits and that Jay can't ever get a job without Sammy's approval anywhere, which was utter BS. Jay had already got a job in the company I was working in, after I gave a good word and vouched for him. I started to piece together the puzzle of Sammy's wrongdoings for my revenge. First, I called to his clients and business associates and presented them with rock-hard evidence. One by one, he lost his customers. Then I contacted the police about his tax evasion and false security company. At this point, local IRS was more than interested about Sammy's business. Soon I heard that he had vanished completely from public. Not much later, I learned that he was convicted on numerous charges and had to pay thousands in legal fees and fines and received probation of about a year. He had to hide from public as he'd also lied about his education and had scammed numerous people. I started to receive messages in Facebook that his story was spreading like a wildfire. I heard that he can't get work from anywhere as his story was shared in my country's biggest private security-oriented page in Facebook with more than 80% of all active security officers and bouncers belonging to that group page. I was more than happy, but somehow felt that Sammy still had something else coming for him. Last year, I heard he was running an ATV/quad bike organization and was again collecting fees from those who wanted to be part of ATV safaris, etc., even though he was a notoriously bad driver. Something told me not to do anything. And would you believe it? One day, Sammy was leading his ATV safari and crashed his ATV and broke his spine. I didn't feel sorry for him at all, as I know what kind of scum he really is. I saw him a few months after. He had a walking stick and was limping badly. Now my revenge was complete, with a little aid from our fair friend Karma. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.